welcome to the Mill. Very excited to be joined by two very special friends, guests, colleagues, partners, Chris Duhaime and Jenna Baggs. Chris, I'm going to read through your incredibly impressive bio before I get to last but not least. Jenna's also very impressive bio. Chris is the creative director and founder of Pivot Creative, based in Manchester, New Hampshire, right down the street from Mill & Co. As a designer, Chris started Pivot in his Hooksett basement, much like all the other geniuses in the world, like Jeff Bezos and what's his name, Steve Jobs, and a bunch of other people. So Chris is right up there with them. He was designing websites and ultimately grew it into an all-encompassing creative management company, specializing in branding, social media, marketing strategies, and technology-based solutions, employing several New Hampshire-based employees, contractors, and serving both businesses and nonprofits, both locally and nationally. He's also the founder of Spark Offices. More recently, he and his wife developed a collaborative workspace located in downtown Manchester. And there's some exciting news coming that'll be shared soon about Spark. Spark Offices is a cutting-edge co-working solution for solopreneurs, business owners, and freelancers looking for a more professional space to launch, support, and grow their businesses. Focused on the community, Spark's goal is to provide small businesses with networking and educational opportunities to grow and expand their business. By providing a modern professional space at an affordable price, Spark gives business owners the environment and resources to achieve their growth goals responsibly. But enough about Chris, let's talk about Jenna. She's the VP of Operations at Pivot Creative. She joined in 2020, fun year for all of us, as the operational arm of the leadership team. Her years of experience as a full-time mom, educator, and manager of a national speaker led her to the perfect niche with a holistic set of skills that have been a perfect complement to Chris's vision for Pivot. Again, which is an all-encompassing creative management company. They're proud to grow their team, continuing to grow with more New Hampshire-based employees and contractors. Jenna is also the office manager of Spark Offices. So not only using her management skills, but also her hostess skills, which we'll need to discuss where you got those hostess skills in her day-to-day operations of Spark Offices. Spark, again, cutting edge co-working space. If you are looking for some space, they are the place to go. Please check them out on LinkedIn. We'll be tagging them in this copy. Thank you both so much for being here. This is really exciting. For those who are just watching, Pivot Creative and Mill & Co. have had a partnership for almost a year now, coming up on a year. We met at the Innovation Summit hosted by the New Hampshire Tech Alliance in 2022, where I sat down at a table as an agency, right, going to network and meet other companies. And of course, the one table I chose to sit at was with the only other marketing agency in the room. Chris was sitting at that table and we hit it off totally. And I think we were even teasing one of your employees that we wanted him to get engaged. And I was like, oh, my fiance is a jeweler. And so then we just formed this really interesting partnership. What's exciting for Mill & Co. working with Pivot is we share a lot of the same ethos. We share the same mission. We value the same things, which really is having a good collaborative environment and making sure that our clients feel really valued. The way that both of our businesses operate is really unique to traditional agency life, where you're not pigeonholed in a retainer for 12 months. We're really a strategic and creative partner for you. When I've heard from pretty much every client that we work with that they really value that we feel like just an extension of their team. They feel like we're always present. They feel like we're in their office with them, even if we're all remote. So I'm excited to continue to pave this way because I have believed since I launched Mill & Co. 5.5 years ago that this is the future of marketing. So thank you both so much for joining. I'm really excited to dive in today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. It's fun to hit like this Brady Bunch effect because typically I'm just interviewing one person, but I love having a group. So I'm going to try to throw questions to each of you so we're not, or just everyone shout at the same time. Like, I'm good with that too. We're a family here. So first I want to talk about client work. One of the things that really irked me before I started Mill & Co. and working at very traditional agencies was the client would express challenges or concerns, not necessarily with marketing, with their business, operations, goals, strategic planning. And the agency was so focused on the retainer work that they were, in my opinion, leaving money on the table because they weren't listening to client problems to go back to them with solutions. But even to just engage in dialogue to make the client feel, wow, I really trust and value their opinion. To me, that is worth its weight in gold over just executing projects because then they feel like they can't live without you. So I've always had that kind of vision and pivot. I know you have as well. So I'd love to understand and have you kind of talk through maybe even some examples. When you're listening to clients who are identifying challenges, what are some of the things that we really need to be paying attention to or even kind of reading between the lines? And what is it that we're really trying to accomplish by engaging in those conversations with our clients? Chris, I'll kick it to you first.
Yeah, I guess I'll field this one. I would say, oftentimes we get sort of thrown in the middle of projects sometimes, right? So, the marketing, for marketing, they sometimes people just want a website or they just want social media and they don't really spend the time to do any of the strategy that's involved in that. So, we sometimes have to pump the brakes a little bit with clients and just say, hey, let's really focus on who your ideal clients are. And by doing that, that actually gives us that sort of strategy and that game plan for them to move forward
Mm,
and uncover some of those lost opportunities that maybe don't come when you're just doing a website or just doing a particular graphic or something that they're asking you for.
mm,
Because during those strategy sessions, you really have to dig in deep. Like one thing we always say is we always question the answers.
mm,
We always want to make sure that we're asking follow-up questions and making sure that we're not just taking their answer at face value, and we're really trying to question their answers so that we're getting to the the, the deeper root of what sort of they're experiencing. Because I do find a lot of times there's a lot of crossover between just general business and marketing, and
mhm,
sometimes I feel like we're in the room with them to
mhm.
help them figure out whatever their issue is. It could be anything. Like we sometimes get asked things that are very much outside of our marketing realm, and our goal is to always make sure that we're providing the extra value to go out and find that answer, or to at least point them in the right direction to be able to find the answer, or connect them. Like one big reason we started the co-working space in the first place was to make connections, right, and to help people network. And it's just such a good complement to Pivot and what we're doing there, because it's easy for us to look at our members and like even just some of the partners that we work with through that and start offering solutions to clients that they didn't even know they needed maybe at that time, and just helping them get through those challenges.
Yeah. I think there's also an
And
art.
I'd like to say
Oh,
too that leaving space for the conversation to happen with our clients as opposed to just being that task oriented mindset allows for us to share the issues that maybe we have as business owners and commiserate some, or leaving space for them to actually open up uh, definitely has its advantage when you want to feel like you're their partner.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I had a mentor very early in my career share with me that um, the outcome and output and results are almost meaningless if there is not a valuable relationship in place first. Because then we're just like churning and burning, but we're not providing value. Maybe we're not evaluating the numbers and saying, hey, here's some insights we think we can pull from this. And here's what that means from more of a transactional perspective. Here's how we can capitalize on this or pivot to change this, pun intended, And so for me, I think that we've really grown our success on being a trustworthy, value providing partner to our clients. And, like, again, there's a lot of different fee structures for different agencies, whether it's hourly based or project and value based. We're purely value based, with the exception of people that just want to consult with me, right? Like that is an hourly thing. That's an hour of my time. When it comes to projects, we're really pushing towards saying, this is the value of this work. And if they have random questions within that, I'm not going to sit there and nickel and dime you for every little thing. And I think that is a huge misconception for clients, because unfortunately, that's what happens at a lot of companies that aren't working on a more of a value-based project and thinking it's not just about the dollar amount. How much value can I provide to this client? Are there areas that I can go above and beyond that genuinely aren't also going to like blow the scope out of the water? Of course, there's a fine line, as you both know, and I know all too well. Um, but I have time and time again been rewarded with positive client relationships by focusing on value over just outcome.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, even from like a in-house versus outsourced resource when it comes to marketing, where a lot of different services actually like oftentimes when you're bringing somebody in-house, they're sort of bound by the clock, right? So for us, the clock never really ends, and we're still trying to provide value even outside of 9 to 5. I find myself pretty regularly thinking about clients and what they're doing and
Mhm.
trying to make connections for them when I'm doing random things with my son or with my wife, and just trying to find and writing things down, taking notes, making a mental uh, note to myself, or sending myself a text or a message saying, "Hey, we should explore this for this client." That happens on a pretty regular basis for
Mhm.
us, for sure.
Yeah. Chris, do you find yourself stacking chairs for your co-working space in your garage and looking at them and like, okay, how do I aesthetically make these look good in my garage so that it pleases the whole garage in its entirety? I'll take
My
your
main
silence as a
concern at
yes.
home is just to make sure that my main concern is to make sure that my wife is happy with the chairs in the
The
garage. So
client,
if the
the
chairs in the
client.
garage are not
That's right.
exactly, she is the client. She's the
Exactly.
client, she's the
Yeah.
boss, she's all
Yeah.
of them. So
Yeah, you guys have weekly status check-ins. So Jenna, question for you. You and I
sure.
have been in positions where we've been presenting creative to clients, and knock on wood, and very proud to say this scenario has not happened to us, but I do think it's important to talk about. Um, if we were to present work to a client and they were like, "This is just
Mhm.
off base," or "I don't like it," um, talk us through what our approach is when we come into situations like that, because I know that it can be challenging for some people to not take that personally, especially from the creative side. There's so much heart in creative work, and there's so
Mhm.
much passion, and it does feel like an extension of the creative team, that when it's met with resistance, it can create tension. So talk me through not only how you manage that with the client side, but also with the internal creative side.
It's actually a really good question, and I'm glad you asked me instead of Chris because I'm not a designer, so it's not as personal for me.
I know.
um, it's, yeah, it's a really important piece of the puzzle, and I think adds to the conversation that we already started about being in relationship with the client. So
Mm,
digging in and asking, okay, you don't like the way this logo is going. What is it that you do like? And
mm,
hear those answers. It- Dig into what it is that you don't like and hear those answers. Typically, if I go back and ask more details or dig into the information, they tend to tell you without maybe them even realizing it, they tend to tell you what the problem is. And then from there, you can assess whether it's something that needs to be addressed with creative, or whether it's time to push back and say, from a professional opinion, I understand that this is the way we've always done it. But if that's the only thing that you don't like about it, perhaps it's time to try something different to get a different result. So there are some options, but if you don't ask questions, you don't know which way to go.
yeah,
So I think the conversation is the important piece of the puzzle here.
100%.
And the
And
same is true on the inside, right? So
yeah.
you go back to your creative team, whether it's content or it's a design or font that's used. I think that the conversation just simply can be the information that you then gathered from the conversation with the client. So the more you share, the more they understand that it maybe wasn't just them, or maybe they have an opportunity to see you stand up for the value that they put into whatever the work was. So I think it's win-win, really.
Yeah. One of my favorite lessons that I've learned in owning my own business for the last 5.5 years, when presenting creative, you might think it's about having good presentation skills, which in part it is. You might think it's about having the best looking deck to present it, which in part it is. Um, you might think it's about who's on the call and how many people are on the call or how few people are on the call, and in
Mhm.
part it is. But to me, the most important thing I can do whenever I'm presenting creative or presenting feedback to a creative from a client is having a really high level of emotional intelligence. And it's not talked about because if you have empathy and emotional intelligence, you're not going to be, the boat won't be rocked by receiving something that you weren't expecting because you were already at that higher level of functioning, of thinking, of like, let me truly try to dig deep into why they feel this way. Or let me show gratitude to this freelancer, knowing that this is going to be a lot of feedback, even if it's not negative feedback, but it's the volume, right? So for me,
Mhm.
having emotional intelligence and working with people that have high levels of emotional intelligence and empathy is what continues to foster stronger relationships with clients. So that you're not coming into that being combative, like, well, you're wrong. We're the creatives. You paying us. Like, this is what we want. But I also think, Jenna, you touched on a really interesting point, and we've been there with clients a lot. They did hire us for a reason. And I do think it's important that we aren't just wallflowers or pushovers. I do think it's important, and I think clients who are good clients see this as a real value is that we go back and say, let's have a conversation because I actually disagree with you, but I really want to understand why you feel this way. Let me show you my point of view. To me, that has always been met
Mhm.
with acceptance from clients. I know that's very lucky. I hope
Mhm.
forever it continues. Um, but I think that's also a skill, is to approach it as, I'm not fearful of you, but I really respect you, but I wanna make sure you hear and understand me.
Right. It's very true. To your point earlier in our talk, is that they hired us as the experts, the arm of their team, because we have the knowledge that they don't maybe have in house. And so you're absolutely right. And I completely agree with your emotional intelligent piece of the puzzle. That empathy goes so far. It's very true. So it's relationship, right? And we
Yeah.
keep saying that, but that is the core of all of it, whether it's with our contractors or with our clients or with, each other as colleagues. I think it's just a core piece of the puzzle. You're right.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, no matter how big that Mill& Co. has gotten, I consistently get feedback from clients that they feel like we're their only client. And of course, that gets more
Mhm.
challenging as we continue to grow. But to me, that is like an invaluable insight of, okay, it's not really about the money, the cost, the value. It's not about the scopes of work. It is really genuinely about how we make them feel. Because at the end of the day, they're going to spend their marketing dollars with somebody. They've got to do these things. They've got to have the collateral. They need a site. They need social. They need strategy. They need these things. They have to spend money on it. So to me, when you put that aside, what's the only differentiating factor? It's the relationship, it's the understanding, it's the communication, it's working
Mhm.
through the hard shit. It's having the tough conversations. It's having the conversations of, hey, we want to change things up totally, and us to be able to say, yeah, no problem. We'll pull that together. We'll summarize it. We'll come back to you with other ideas without taking it personally.
Mhm.
Easier said than done, yeah. Not really. I actually think we do a good
It definitely
First.
is.
job, So, and Chris, when you're working on the creative side and overseeing a lot of the creatives, how can we make sure, A, we're all aligned, but B, how do we even get all levels of creatives, not just, the high level managers like us? How do we make sure that everyone is functioning at that level of thinking really proactively about our clients? How do we make sure that even down to the copywriter, the graphic designer, the 3D renderer, is that a word? I made it up. I don't know. Maybe it is. Fact check me later. Uh, How do we encourage and instill that level of strategic thinking across all levels of the organization?
I think it's definitely difficult, but I think what we've kind of done is we've kind of aligned everyone with the mission and vision and the core values. So, part of what we did as a leadership team is try to put those together, and then we sort of introduce that to the rest of the team and try to give examples on when we can sort of utilize these core values in real life scenarios, right? Going that extra mile, taking that phone call at 5:15 when you're about to head home, or getting back to the client as quickly as you can, based
Mhm.
on it being after hours, or it's a urgent thing, or something along those lines. I think those are things that come all the way down to that core value
Right.
scenario, and just making sure everyone's in alignment with that.
I heard something great. I can't take credit for this, and I'm also going to butcher it, but it's more about the perception of availability than true availability. And what that really
Yeah.
means is if a client sends something through, and I know they have a sense of urgency about it, but I don't have time until tomorrow to get to it. If I have time, I will say, hey, thanks so much. I will review. I'll let you know if I have any questions within the same day. Why? Right? What does that do? I'm not going to do anything with it till tomorrow, maybe the day after. But that perception of availability immediately makes them feel supported. They may not know. Now, if you're watching this podcast, you might know that I sit on that email for a day, which, again, we'll talk later. But I really think there's a lot of value that comes into that of saying, hey, I've got you. I hear you. I'm on it. I will come back to you with questions.
Yeah, I mean, I know we try to do that as often as we can too.
Mhm.
It does get a little overwhelming sometimes when you have so many people asking for stuff, but I do understand that for sure. It's definitely it's nice to know that somebody's at least thinking about you and your company, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing, right? We're trying to help these businesses succeed, and there's a lot of responsibility on marketing agencies that people maybe don't necessarily even know about. People come to us because they want to make their business grow, and that's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And so there's a lot of responsibility with that. So knowing that you're going to be there for them and supporting them with a quick email saying, "Hey, yep, I got this. We got this. We're looking at it for you."
Mhm.
I think that goes a long way in that partnership and that relationship for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. I was thinking that maybe we should start like a support group for people in marketing that like are like, oh, it was 48 hours and I didn't like we're just like a little, hi, I'm Rachel and I'm a
Yeah.
marketer and we all like get together
Well,
and chat through it.
it, I mean, there's definitely things from an AI perspective that could make some of these follow-ups a little bit easier,
Yeah.
for all of us. It's just a
Yeah.
matter of implementing them. And I've seen things where I don't love like that automatic response necessarily that comes
Mhm.
from like just being busy. I don't know if you've ever gotten one of those before where it's
Yeah, I
it's
have.
basically like you just email them and it automatically sends back responses
Mhm.
says, "Hey, we're busy right now." I don't necessarily believe in that necessarily, but like creating something that feels personal to them,
Mhm.
that says, "Hey, like we are looking at this. This isn't an automatic response from that perspective, but
Mhm.
it's on our list of things to do for sure."
Yeah. Yeah. Love that. But
Almost
when you
treating it
solve
like the IT company would.
yeah.
Mhm.
When you solve that, Chris, just let me know because that's great.
I
We'll
will.
share.
Yeah. Within the next,
I think it's got to
can
do
you
with
get it
like
to me by end of
ticketing.
day?
I think it's like a ticketing system.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know one thing I love about like IT companies is that they do have sort of that support ticketing
Mm.
software that
Mhm.
um, I don't think we've quite figured out as marketers in the same capacity, but it's very similar in how we work,
Mhm.
where their problems are typically maybe hardware, software. Ours are like more business oriented or specific graphics or websites and things like that. So
Yeah.
Mhm.
it's finding that sort of software.
Right. Yeah. How do we automate things that are already somewhat automated and templated that we don't have to just keep step and repeating manually? I'm here for it.
Right.
So let me know.
The
Yeah.
whole piece of the puzzle of technology is awesome, but we also don't want to lose the personal touch because that's a piece of our core values
Right.
and is part of the relationship process of being part of our client's team. So it's finding a way to blend the two.
Yeah. I think we should do another podcast episode about AI in general because I think one of the reasons I avoid it for things like creative writing is because I am maybe a little old school in my thinking here, but when it comes to like our blueprint, for example, it is influenced by so much data, quantitative and qualitative conversations with clients over a 2-hour period. There's so much that goes into that. But I really see the value of automating some things without losing our core values of we're here, it's personal, it's custom. You're not going to feel cookie cutter. You're not going to get the same or similar output from someone else. So, yeah, that would be a good idea for another podcast episode down the road.
Part two.
Part 2. So, End of year coming up. Marketers have a love-hate relationship with end of year. I know that we collectively have a lot of planning meetings coming up with our clients to start to look into the new year. And not just from a budgeting perspective. I think that's where a lot of agencies fall short, is they make the focus on how do we just build up your retainer for the next year. And for me, and Chris, I think you touched on this, marketing is business. I want to know your business objectives first. I can then back into that with, and here are marketing solutions that will supplement, solve, or help get us there to solve these business and operational challenges and goals for the next year. So let's talk about some of the things that we're going to be doing in a few short weeks here, to help ensure a smooth transition, not only of active projects to get us through the end of the year, but how do we really make clients feel seen and heard as we're planning out for the following year?
Yeah, I think for me, it comes down to I think a lot of what we've talked about, like listening, coming, asking questions, understanding what the business goals are for the year, and like you said, how can we translate that to marketing goals and tactics that we can use to get to that end goal. And it's a lot about where you've been and where you're trying to go. And I think looking into how the certain tactics have worked or not worked over the years, and said, okay, maybe this kind of worked, but it maybe didn't hit the home run like we wanted it to. Can we go back and do some A/B testing on this, or try something a little different? Still stick with the tactic, but maybe just change up the message. Maybe that's an answer, or maybe it's like that didn't work at all, and we need to scrap that. And now we've got extra money or budget that we can pay. We can do something else with, or we don't even need to do anything. Like everything else is working the way we want it to, so we can cut that out of the budget and not need to. And you can focus on putting that somewhere else. Like I think, like you said, we're trying to be a partner with them, so we don't want to spend unnecessary money if we don't have to. And that's a big thing. Like when it comes to pay per click, for sure. Like, and just ad spend in general. Like our main objective is to make sure that we're spending as little money as possible, because we want to basically utilize that extra money for other campaigns or other tactics, or just put that back in the client's pocket, because that's more valuable to them, as the saving the money, as opposed to just spending. You may get more leads and more visibility with more money, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're the right clients. And so like
Mhm.
really understanding the end of the funnel and the beginning of the funnel, and how they, are you getting the people you said you wanted to get from
Right.
these particular campaigns, or are we going in the wrong direction and not getting the right people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, my main objective going into every meeting that we have to help clients plan for next year is data. I think a lot of times data is thought through, but it's mostly a lot of agencies just kind of have decided, well, these are the projects we want to do, based on nothing other than maybe some selfish thought. I know I am generalizing here for advertising agencies as one, but our focus is really, what worked, what didn't, what can we see from the numbers that maybe isn't obvious at a first pass, and drilling down not just on like some of the simple data of like engagement, but if you are a business that needs traffic to go to your website for people to take a call to action, then you bet your butt we're tracking traffic to the site and where it came from. Where are we not doing as well? Should we cut budget from there, or is it worth revisiting? What's going really well? How can we learn from that? Like you mentioned, Chris, A/B test, funnel more funding into what's already working. If we know that people like to see content of your team and your employees, how can we continue to utilize that? Maybe we make a video series highlighting your employees, because that's what people are responding to, and it's creating a call to action. So I totally agree with you, Chris. It's not about how much money can we charge, how many projects can we squeeze in. I mean, let's be honest, we're both businesses. We need to make money. We need to feed ourselves and our employees. Like, of course we're there. But to me,
Yeah.
I've seen so much more success by having a softer approach led by data and insights and true recommendations based on value than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a culmination of listening throughout the year that is a piece of that puzzle too. Rachel,
Mhm.
you and I have heard clients give us feedback, in a call where we're going over a to-do list,
Mm.
and they had a great experience that they
Mhm.
share with us. It was so easy to be able to share a link with a potential client because you've, done all this work for us over the year. Um, it's great feedback. It's that proof of concept that you're hearing in the day to day that
Mm.
goes into that planning as well. And that's that relationship piece. So the data is super important because it's to business owners, it's the hard and fast numbers that prove the concept. But then there's the relationship piece of the puzzle too, of hearing them throughout the year and bringing that to the table when it's time to strategize for the next year as well.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Jenna. I could not agree with that more. And I've also experienced things where clients will say, yeah, we go to this golf tournament every year. And I do nothing with that information. But then I remember it. And 6, 7, 8 months later, I bring it up. Oh, right. Are you getting ready to go to that golf tournament? I don't know about the two of you, but when I meet someone or a friend or even an acquaintance, and I see them down the road and they're like, oh, how's your dog? Boone. And I'm like, first of all, he's
Mhm.
great. Second, like it means so much to me that this person not only remembered me, remembered our conversation, and then had the wherewithal to bring it back to me. That's just human behavior, right? And so again, I love that point, Jenna, because I think that that is really critical in relationship nurturing over an extended period of time with clients. Whether or not that turns into a project with
Mhm.
us is to be seen, right? Most of the times it does, but it's not brought up in that way. It's just like, oh, that's right, you had that thing. Are you still planning on going to that? Yeah, that's great. Have you emailed all
Mhm.
your clients to let them know? No, well, we'd be happy to help you if you need like a template, and so it does get there eventually. But I've always found that softer sell works than being like, and here's an email plan that you didn't ask for no reason at all.
Yep,
Which
it's very
we've
true.
all.
Actually, that's my favorite. You make a great point about Boone. My favorite quote from a book is from How to Win Friends and Influence People, and the
Mm,
quote is not exact. The quote is that everyone's favorite word in any language is their own name. To speak to the value of remembering someone's name and
mhm.
having the honestly some certain situations the strength to use it instead of just we've all been in those networking meetings where you're semi unsure, do I use it, and it's the power of using someone's name
Yeah.
changes everything.
Have either of you seen the movie House Bunny with Anna? Oh my gosh, what's her last name? I'm gonna have to link it. It's one of the funniest scenes. My college girlfriends and I exchange this probably several times a year. Basically, her way of remembering people's names, she says them in like a really deep, gravelly voice, like almost like an animal. When she meets someone, I'm not gonna do it to embarrass myself on this, and all my friends are gonna crack up at me that I did this. But please check out that scene from House Bunny, with Anna,
Okay.
who used to be married
Noted.
to Chris, whatever his face is. You know what I mean? This podcast has taken a sharp left turn.
Yeah.
Last question, because we've talked about all the things that we're gonna do and we wanna do and the things we help our clients with, but what do we find challenging about strategic planning as we're heading into the end of the year? What are some things that we, as agencies, as partners to these clients, dread or feel is like, "Oof, man, this is always a really big hurdle to get over?"
For me, I think it's there's always a lot of good ideas that get put out there, and the execution of those ideas requires time and money and people, and resources are thin for everyone right now. So it's sometimes difficult to execute on really great ideas as quickly as you can, right? It's sometimes and the fact that you're trying to execute on all these great ideas for so many different clients at the same time. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we run into is, yeah, we come up with all these great ideas and everybody's on board and we feel good about them, but then it's like, well, now we actually have to do them. And that's sometimes the hardest part is finding the time
Yeah.
to get everything done and making sure that it's to our quality of standards and that's sometimes the hardest part too is sometimes you can do stuff, but it's just not going to meet the quality standards that you're trying to, portray as a company. And for that, it's going to require more time. So it's back and forth. It's multiple revisions. It's it's not easy to get to the final result that's always the best. It sometimes requires some back and forth internally before you even get to the client.
Mhm.
And then the client's going to have their own set of revisions and changes too. So it's finding the time to balance all of that and get things done, really.
This is music to my ears, Chris. Chris is our absolute phenomenal visionary. He dreams big and sees the big picture in a way that I have never seen anybody else before. And of course, in my role in operations, it's always that's awesome. Now I have to make this happen. And to his point, to
Yeah.
the standard that we expect to turn.
Yeah.
So that's music to my ears. Thank you, Chris. I would say for me, the biggest hurdle that we face at Pivot with year-end strategy planning is it is a lot of prep and culmination of the year and pulling it all together and really sitting and thinking and coming up with the best options for our clients and then presenting and hearing and adjusting is finding time to do the strategic planning for Pivot in the midst of all that. And
Mhm.
I think this is probably another piece of the puzzle that we could have in our marketers little workshop
Support.
day is that the reality is it's something that we need to be doing for ourselves as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
for our own business growth because we are business owners and trying to grow our businesses alongside the best practices of what we're you know sharing with our clients and implementing for them. So
Mm.
for me, it's that piece of the puzzle that's a really big one that is often not talked about.
Yeah. My cousin Maureen
That's a good point.
Ballatore
Yeah.
owns Agency 29, which is a strategic and creative agency for food, beverage, and agriculture clients. And once a year,
Neat.
she takes herself on a solo retreat somewhere local within driving distance. She'll just go away for 2, 3 nights, and she sets up goals and intentions for each day. And she does it around, I think, near the end of Q3 every year. And I used to be like, well, wouldn't that be nice to have that time? And now I'm like, oh, I need to
Mhm.
make that time because you're right,
Right.
Jenna. It's as important as it is for us to do this for our clients. We also need to do it for us. It's important. And even if things don't change drastically, if we feel like we're in a good groove, we still should be
Mhm.
reflective of the time that we've had this year, the
Mhm.
clients that we've picked up and what we want for our relationships with them. I think for me, the most challenging part of strategic planning is like you, Chris, I'm a dreamer and I love to think of big things in a big way. And where I struggle is I feel like I can see it so clearly. The data's there, the numbers are there, the insights are there, the budget is there. And I'm like, okay, we have to do this project. This is going to work. I just know it. I just know this is going to work. And the client doesn't have love for it. And then I have a little folder on our Google Drive where I save ideas I refuse to let die. I do. So for me, it's more of um, I feel so personally and professionally invested in their success. And I feel so strongly about these projects that we've pitched that while, yes, they may sign on for a lot of them and they're like, oh, all right, got to figure out how to do this now. Um, they may say no to some that I really feel strongly about. So that's a consistent hurdle for me this time of year, every year.
It's hard to spend other people's money sometimes.
I have no
Be
problem doing it,
nice,
Chris.
but
I was
yeah,
gonna say I'm good with spending other people's money, but
No problem.
I think I think it's a really good insight, Rachel, and I love that you save the ideas that are just too good
yeah.
to go
Mm.
into the trash pile
Oh,
if
yeah,
they're not
I'll
utilized.
cross
Um,
pitch. If one
good
client says no
idea.
and I'm like, "Oh, you know what? That would work for this client." We're cross pitching. We're just gonna relabel it,
I love it.
because like at the end of the day, listen, like we're strategists, we're creatives, we're designers, we're smart, we problem solve. It does just because we create something for one client doesn't mean it's not also applicable to someone else. So for me, I'm like, if my brain's firing out genius, someone's got to have it. It can't just sit in my graveyard of bones of dead dreams in Google Drive. But yeah, it's fun. I appreciate you both. It's been really, really exciting and challenging and fun and collaborative for Mill& Co to be working with Pivot. I see a lot of really exciting things, and I hope that for anyone who's watching, you take a really good hard look at what you're currently doing for marketing and strategy, and listen to what we've said and how we talk about our approach, because truly and genuinely, we are people that believe in your potential and that want to just provide as much value as possible in any way, any means necessary. And I'd be happy to send out a link to my dead graveyard of dreams that have died uh, after this. Thank you both so much. It was really, really great to chat with you. For anyone watching, of course, Chris and Jenna will be tagged in our LinkedIn copy. Please connect with them, reach out to me if you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into The Mill, and we will see you next time.